Well, hello, my name is Andy Tidy and welcome back to what is probably the final episode of Series 6 of Canal Hunter, where we are seeking out the lost 60 miles of the Birmingham Canal navigations. But for those Canal Hunter enthusiasts out there, fear not. The bulk of the hunt for the lost sections of the local canal network may well be over, but the quest to dig into the watery history of this region has barely begun. Canal Hunter will continue. And so for this episode you find me standing in California. No, not that American one full of tanned beauties and the Hollywood sign in the background. This is California, a small outpost of Northfield in South Birmingham. The small village of California stood at the eastern end of the 2-mile Lapal Tunnel, a tunnel which emerged in the meadow behind me. And if you want to know more about the Lapal Tunnel, I would suggest you look at the last episode of Canal Hunter, where we spent a whole episode unpicking this subterranean waterway, the 4th longest ever built in the UK. Well, in this episode, we're going to cover the last 2 miles of this canal route, from the eastern portal of the tunnel here in California down to its junction with the Worcester Birmingham Canal in Selly Oak. Now, I mentioned in the last episode that this end of the canal continued in operation for much longer than the one in the west, and that was due to the massive brickworks in this area. The whole area behind me was 3 vast brickworks and their associated clay pits, and they were all connected by tramways and inclined planes, and they all led to the canal side wharf and basin, which was the point where the bricks were taken away to where they were needed. Now, if you go back up the hill 400 yards behind me, beyond the electrical pylon today, you come to the site of the Lapal Tunnel top brickworks with its huge marl hole, all now reprofiled into public open space. And then a few hundred yards to the south there was the Lapal Tunnel top patent brickworks, which was disused by 1912. And then right down by the canal here at the side of the water there was the Stonehouse brickworks with its basin exiting to the north immediately beside the tunnel entrance. The key to the industrial development of this area was the great brick-making clay that it contained, and these brickworks were active right back to the time when the tunnel was dug. In fact, the tunnel itself consumed millions of local bricks, and kilns were established specifically to manufacture them. And that brings me to one of my favourite stories about this section of the canal. During its construction, the brick lining for the tunnel was to be supplied by the ill-fated Lapal Brick Tunnel Company of California, a company owned by one John Garlick. He had installed various brick-making machines, but none of them would work satisfactorily. And being a somewhat impulsive and quick-tempered man, he became enraged at the constant failure to get good results. And in the end, he was found down here one Sunday morning with his sledgehammer smashing the machines to bits in total frustration. There are shades of Basil Fawlty in this. Unsurprisingly, his limited company failed, and within a year, Garlick himself was declared bankrupt. These days it's hard to believe that this area was a massive brick-making centre. The kilns are all long gone, and Birmingham Council has filled in all the old clay pits with municipal rubbish, bringing the profile of the ground back to something like it was in the pre-industrial revolution era. The immediate area around the tunnel mouth has all been filled in, and instead of standing in a cutting 30 to 40 feet deep, I'm in fact standing one huge pile of rubbish. Well, that's enough of sunny California. Time to head down the last 2 miles of the Dudley No2 Canal, a canal bed which has all been filled in, but has been converted into a pretty good towpath all along the way. So let's go and take a look at what's there today. The first bridge we come to on the canal is known as the Woley Castle Bridge, or sometimes the Summary Road Bridge. And it's odd how modern names carry echoes from the past. This bridge, Summary Bridge, is on account of the lane it carried to the nearby manor house, once owned by a family called de Summary, and they were one of the barons of Dudleys in the 1200s. Their original manor house was a wooden structure which was built on an even older, probably Anglo-Saxon earth mound. Both of the parapets of the old bridge still remain, and if you take those with the old photos, you can see that this was quite a high bridge, and it gives it a good indication of how far down the water line was even here. So the infill is probably 15 feet deep at this point. But this also marks the start of the footpath which follows the towpath all the way through to Selly Oak. It also squeezes in between the line of the old canal and the foundations of Woley Castle. Woley Castle itself fell into disrepair in the 1500s, and as is so often the case, many of its walls were mined for other local construction projects, not least the construction of the Dudley No2 Canal. And here is the course of the Stonehouse Brook, the stream which fed the castle and also provided power to the watermill. At this point, the Dudley No2 Canal crossed it on a small aqueduct, and the aqueduct was narrowed down so that they could also use it as a gauging station. The line of the canal continues this way. Now, while the Woley Castle makes for a really nice canal side attraction, and one which has its viewing platform open to the public most weekends, the canal track itself, it has to be said, is not exactly beautiful. It's very much at the back of 1930s suburban houses, with Reservoir Road running just down to my left. The canal track was all filled in back in the 1960s, and the locals have continued the process by repeatedly chucking their rubbish over their back fences. So, to be perfectly honest, it's a bit of a scruffy route, but at least we can say that the canal bed is still very present and very visible. Now, it's my belief that, like the Bentley Canal and some of the other extinct canals, there's probably a culvert being buried under this route, because periodically you come across manholes like these which would give access to it should service be needed. Well, after 20 minutes or so of brisk walking, we find ourselves entering into the northern section of Selly Park. One of the distinguishing landmarks of the canal in Selly Park is one of the few remaining built bridges, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hug the line of the canal and see what I can find. I tried diving straight down the line of the canal, but didn't work out so well. So I found another little track, and we'll follow this one into the woods and see what we can see. In the scheme of things, Selly Oak Park is a relatively modern public open space. It all kicked off in 1899 when a member of the Cadbury family donated 11 acres of farmland for the local growing population to enjoy. I dare say they also enjoyed watching boats come through this canal, and beside us we have now got a canal bed very clearly visible. The acreage of this public park was steadily increased over the years until it reached its current size of 31 acres just before World War II. The park was going to be named after the original donors, the Gibbons family, but they didn't want their name attached to it, so they simply called it Selly Oak Park. And instead, the road which forms the other boundary across that way was named Gibbons Road. And it's here in Selly Oak Park that the drainage channel, which has been buried underneath my feet for the last mile and a half, finally comes out on the surface. And we start to find something that looks distinctly like a canal. Now, the re-emergence of a canal bed is no great coincidence. It hasn't just survived for the last 60 years by magic. There is an active canal restoration body who are trying to reinstate the entire canal that I'm exploring all the way through to Hales Owen. In its early days, the park was massively popular and full of all sorts of visitor attractions. These days it's become a bit, well, municipal in the bad sense of the word. But there are plans to reinstate this canal, initially here as far as the parkland, and the idea is to create some moorings which would bring an added dimension of life and vitality and interest to this northern corner of the park. And so we come to Worley Park Bridge, the second surviving built bridge on this side of the Lapal Tunnel hill. It used to carry the carriageway from the busy outside world into the centre of the park. These days it carries us through into the entrance of Harborne Wharf. And this is the area where the past and the future of this canal start to converge. There are plans to restore the Dudley No2 Canal right the way through to Hales Owen. But as a first step, they want to get the canal back into the pleasant area of Selly Park. And to that end, the old basin has been excavated, and efforts have been made to restore some of the basin's walls. And maybe a future episode of Canal Hunter will have a look at the restoration in a bit more detail. But the principle behind this particular hunt is to look for the old route, and that's what I'm trying to follow. The old photos of this area can be a little confusing, because the bridge just downstream from Harborne Wharf has, well, moved. You see, the original one carrying Selly Oak Bridge was just to the east or beyond the one we can see today. But then in 1927 the new bridge needed to be built, so they built one to this side of it. And when they built it, the new road runs right above the old boat building dock, Monk's Dock, which used to stand just in here. Of course, in due course, even the new 1920s, 30s road bridge was inadequate for today's traffic, so the bridge has been expanded once again. But this one was built with canal restoration in mind. So we have a fully navigable channel running underneath it through into the site of what was Battery Park. Do you want to take a peek? Well, I'm sure that can be arranged if I just have a look in here. And so the line of the Dudley No2 Canal follows underneath the modern roads and into the site of what was the Birmingham Battery and Metal Company, later the Selly Oaks Metal Works. This is an industrial site owned by the Gibbons family. They were the ones who donated the first land to get this park in Selly Oak established. Truth be told, I first came across references to the Birmingham Battery and Metal Company sitting what became known as Battery Park, and I rather naively assumed it was some kind of ever-ready battery made for making electrical batteries. But not so. This was a metalworking factory where the metal was battered into the desired shape. The canal through Battery Park included the Selly Oak stop lock, and we can see this in a number of old photos. It had double gates at both ends. Initially this was built to prevent water escaping into the Worcester Birmingham Canal, but it also acted as a barrier to prevent the water that was flushed through the tunnel disappearing into the adjoining waterway. And finally, of course, it was a gauging station when the freeboard of the loaded boats could be measured and the tolls could be levied. Boats then entered into the Worcester Birmingham Canal underneath the towpath bridge. Well, I'm standing on the far side of the Worcester Birmingham Canal, the point where the Dudley No2 Canal joined. And that means I've come to the end of this episode of Canal Hunter. Truth be told, I'm come to the end of Series 6. Well, it's with mixed feelings that I come to this point, because we've now explored pretty much all of the lost 60 miles of the Birmingham Canal navigations. An exploration which has spanned 42 episodes and 3 years. The first one went out on Christmas Eve 2018. Plus, of course, there are all of those photo streams and supplementary episodes which have tried to gather the archive photos for these long-forgotten transport routes. Taken as a whole, the Canal Hunter episodes have now been viewed over 250,000 times. That's not bad for what I think is a very niche aspect of a largely forgotten canal network. And I would like to think that between us we've recorded and documented an important element of our region's industrial history. Anyway, by and large, this is the end of my quest to track down those missing miles. And my thanks have to go to Richard Chester Brown for kicking off the whole saga with his booklet. My thanks also have to go to you who've followed my explorations and who've added comments of encouragement, correction and elaboration. They have all played their part. Now fear not, Canal Hunter isn't dead, far from it. There is so much canal history to be unpicked and so little time to do it. As they say, watch this space. But for now, cheerio and happy hunting.